What's going on, everybody, and welcome back into the Brenden Schaeffer Fantasy Football channel. Brenden Schaeffer here, talking some trade for candidates in Week 5 of the NFL season. We're going to start in this video at the wide receiver position, taking a look at everybody's performance across the NFL from Week 4 and deciding who among the wide receivers that maybe underperformed last week could be viable trade for candidates, perhaps a buy low candidate in your fantasy leagues this week. If you enjoy this type of fantasy football content, make sure you click that subscribe button, click like on this video, and drop your fantasy questions below. That can be trade questions, that can be start-sit questions, that can be any type of philosophical fantasy questions. We will cover it here on the Brenden Schaeffer Fantasy Football channel. So thank you guys for joining me. Let's jump right into the content of this video, taking a look at the wide receivers. You can see the highest performing wide receivers from the week 4 in the NFL are on your screen here. And it's pretty simple. We are going to go down toward the bottom of this list and find some of the names that we think could be guys that maybe the fantasy manager that has this player on his team or her team this past week is frustrated with that player right now because of the recent performance. That could spell opportunity for you if you're savvy enough to pull off the deal in a timely manner. So we have the player names to the left. On the far right of your screen, you will see the point totals for that player from Week 4. Let's dive in. Obviously, the people at the top of this list are not names that we're going to be targeting necessarily as buy low candidates, but there is such a thing as buy high. Sometimes a player just is electric and you think he's going to maintain that, and so you pay basically what it's worth to acquire him at that given moment because you think his stock is going to continue to rise. So we'll kind of take a look as we go down at some of those names as well. Nico Collins was a guy who definitely performed better than you would have expected with 35 PPR points last week. And the scores, by the way, that you're looking at are in PPR formats. So like A.J. Brown, Stephon Diggs, no, don't trade for those guys this week. There will be weeks that you can try and do it. This isn't one of them because their manager is really happy with them after last week. And they're grade A caliber players. So it's not like a situation where they performed above their head. That's kind of what you expect superstars to do. And both A.J. Brown and Diggs did that last week. Nico Collins, however, performed over his head. So on the flip side of the buy low would be the sell high. If you believe that Nico Collins isn't going to do that every week, which he's probably not going to do to that extent, what he was able to do last week for the Texans every single time he goes out on the football field. But there could be reason to believe that he has a very nice season because C.J. Stroud looks to be legit. And if you look at the numbers for Nico Collins, there's really only been one bad game in the bunch. The 5 points he scored in Week 3. Other than that, 14, 27, and 35. I would make an argument that Nico Collins is a buy high. That if you are treating him like a top 15, top 20 wide receiver the rest of the way, that's certainly the way to do it. Now, maybe even saying top 20 isn't high enough. I'm in 14-team leagues. Nico Collins, very well, is going to finish as a top 14 wide receiver. So I don't think it's unreasonable to trade perhaps a bigger name for him, a guy that hasn't been performing as well, and try to get Nico Collins on a buy high. Puka Nacua is an interesting case. He had another smash week last week, had the touchdown in overtime for the Rams to beat the Colts. 31 PPR points for Puka, but Cooper Kupp is on the horizon. He may not play this week, but he's practicing. Sean McVay said, well, the paper said he was limited on Wednesday, but he was really a full go for us, and we'll see what the practice report ends up being later Thursday afternoon as I record this video at 3:30 Central Time. The Rams have not taken the practice field, I wouldn't think, as of yet, so we don't really know. But if Cooper Kupp comes back this week, is that going to lower the value of Puka Nacua? I think it will a little bit, because I don't think he's going to continue to be the superstar name that he's been. But, Puka Nacua could still be a very valuable fantasy asset and could still finish as a wide receiver 1, even with Cooper Kupp, especially given that Cooper Kupp could go back on the injured list, and then suddenly Puka is wheels up. So I would say tread carefully with this, but Puka Nacua, if you want him on your team, now might honestly be the last chance to do it, because the people that just saw a 31-point performance are going, I don't know, Cooper Kupp coming back, maybe he'll continue that. You'll have to pay up to get him. There's no doubt about that. The fantasy community is now wise to Puka Nacua's talent. However, I do think him and Cooper Kupp can fill simultaneous roles on the Rams offense, and both of them can be top 20, top 24 receivers the rest of the way, and maybe even better if Matthew Stafford just continues to have the relationship with both of them that it seems that he does. So Puka's an interesting case, not a buy low by any means, but maybe the last chance to get him if the manager that has him is worried about Cooper Kupp. And you can ask those questions in your league to try and find out what your league mates actually think about their players. Great week by DJ Moore. He might be kind of a sell high candidate or he's just going to continue to be a good wide receiver. This was really kind of the breakout week that we were hoping to see from him, and that's 3 weeks in a row of 13 or better in PPR scoring. So I think if you've got DJ Moore, you're just probably happy that he's finally coming around and we're seeing better performances out of Justin Fields. Michael Wilson is a name off waivers, and I know that I kind of missed the boat on the waiver show this week. I'm going to try to get around to it and get a schedule down where each week I'm able to Tuesday have a waiver show out for you guys by midday so that you can actually use it for your waivers overnight on Wednesday morning. But if somehow Michael Wilson's still out there, I do think he is worth grabbing, but don't overpay for him necessarily. It is still the Arizona Cardinals that we're talking about, and his 26 points came because of 2 touchdowns, so he's not going to score 2 touchdowns every week. Justin Jefferson's great. Ayuk, McLaurin, Godwin. We'll just kind of start to scroll here. Not a ton of 20-plus point wide receiver performances last week in the NFL. Braxton Berrios out of the waiver wire there. Amon-Ra St. Brown, I'm a little worried about his injury. I want to see if there's any sort of update that we get. Reportedly Thursday said he's still aiming to play in Week 5. So that's good news because even if he doesn't play, it doesn't sound like it's a long-term injury. I saw speculation that it could be a sports hernia with the abdomen injury that Amon-Ra is dealing with. That doesn't seem to be the case if he is still considering playing this week. But I guess we'll have to wait and see what happens there. Marquise Brown continuing to do his thing. Christian Kirk, I think, is safe now. I know Zay Jones hasn't returned yet. Keep an eye on that situation, but I feel like he's a little bit safer as a weekly play than I thought he was with the goose egg that he laid in Week 1. Devontae Adams not practicing right now, but he is Devontae Adams. If maybe somebody's worried about his injury, you could try and trade for him off of a 15-point week because you're not often going to see Devontae go much lower than 10 to 15 points. So maybe he's a buy low if people are concerned about the injury. You could try and float it to the manager in your league that owns Adams and say, hey, man, looks like he's kind of banged up right now. Maybe now's the time to swap him out. I think Devontae's going to – that's a guy that I wasn't anti-Devontae preseason. I didn't know how he would mesh with Jimmy G. It was more a Jimmy G concern than anything else. But Devontae Adams is just that good. So I feel like those concerns have certainly been quelled. And unfortunately, I missed out on having very many shares of him across my leagues or best ball because of those concerns. Adam Thielen is another guy that I wasn't heavy on. And I mentioned in last week's episode that he could be somebody that you go and try and trade for because I think he's just going to be incredibly involved in Carolina. They paid him for a multi-year contract to be, and again, 15 points last week. So I think you'll always be able to buy Adam Thielen for cheaper than you should. I'm still calling him a buy right now. It's always going to depend on what you have to give up. And ask me in the comments here on YouTube, what should I be giving up for Adam Thielen? Hit that subscribe button, by the way, if this is your type of fantasy content, because I would love to have you on board here if you like it. But yeah, for Adam Thielen, it's just like people are going to say, oh, he's old, he's kind of washed, whatever. I don't know. I think he might have a really nice role in Carolina to where you might be able to get him on a discount whenever you would look to acquire him. You could always wait for a bad week to come, but when he's getting the target volume that he's getting, 8 targets, 14 targets, 9 targets, I don't know how many of those week 1 duds are going to happen again for Adam Thielen this year. So for PPR, dude, he is fantastic. What did that say on the Yahoo? You guys won't be able to see this on your screen, but the NBC Sports Edge, I'm going to say this was maybe a Roto-Pat that wrote this one. He says the Thielen PPR scam keeps churning in week 4. Come on, it's not a scam. That definitely sounds like a Roto-Pat blurb there if I had to guess, but I guess I'll have to go back and see who actually wrote that one. Let's move on. Gabe Davis, nice week, had the touchdown. Garrett Wilson is a tricky one, man. I still think he could be kind of a fine buy at this point because he's stabilizing, right? He's such a talent, and 14 targets in the game against the Chiefs. That's what you're going to see from Garrett Wilson that's going to sustain him for PPR, even if he's not scoring touchdowns. But again, we're still in that range, 15 points. The manager that just had these players are happy to have had them. Devontae Smith, same thing, 14.8. CeeDee Lamb, I still think better days are to come for CeeDee Lamb. He scored last week and had kind of a quiet week in a weird game where the Cowboys just didn't have to throw the ball. Only 6 targets, only 34 or 36 yards. But he's going to get you double digits every week, and there are going to be the spike weeks. Like week 2 was a spike week where he didn't even score a touchdown. Imagine if he adds a touchdown or 2 to that. He's got the potential to be that guy. To me, there aren't 10 wide receivers in redraft that I would rather have than CeeDee Lamb. But ask me these questions in the comments because like with Adam Thielen, I say, oh, you could get him cheap. There's always context needed for that. So let me know who you're considering trading in order to get these players, and I'll tell you what I think. Jamar Chase, you see, I'm Cybersymmetrics here. He's on my team in this league now after some trades I made this week. And if you guys Let me know in the comments too. Like, yes, I like hearing about what trades you're actually physically making, Brenden, because that allows me to then realize what could be possible. Or if it just pisses you off because you're like, you play with idiots, why would they do that and give you the easy team? Like, I have opinions that I hear on both sides of that spectrum. Whatever you guys think is most helpful is what I will do with the amount that I actually talk about my own teams versus just giving you general philosophical advice here. Let me know in the comments as well on that if you have any thoughts. Terrace Marshall, okay, whatever. I think Mingo missed that game, so he had a nice game. Jahan Dotson, it was nice to see him find the end zone. He's a hold for me right now because the scoring was good last week. But it's not like enough to be a sell high. He went 4 for 27 yards and a touchdown. I think Dotson is talented enough to be a difference maker for your fantasy team. I just don't trust to start him yet. But as far as trades go, I just can't really think of either side I would want to be on those trades. DK Metcalf has had a really solid, consistent season, and thankfully for his managers, found the end zone this week to keep every game above a dozen fantasy points. So no high games for Metcalf yet, and I think it could be hard to find them because of how much of a force Tyler Lockett and Kenneth Walker are going to continue to be for Seattle. But that's kind of interesting for DK. Again, he's kind of in that hold range for me where I'll trade him away if I'm getting a better piece as a package. I'm packaging DK with somebody for a 2-for-1. I could also see buying DK Metcalf if I'm trading 2 lesser wide receivers to get him. It's all about, can you churn and work your way up on your roster? And unless you've been ravaged by injuries, don't ever freak out about not having, a good bench or something. Always be looking to go 2-for-1, 3-for-2, unless you're accounting for injuries. Then there will be rare occasions where I would recommend being the 3 in a 3-for-2 or the 2 in a 2-for-1. But typically, I want to be getting back fewer players than I had because then it allows you to what? Free up a roster spot and churn waivers, which is the name of the game. Keenan Allen could be a buy this week because he only had 12 points. And if you look at what he's done this season, he's been fantastic. 14, 31, 47, and 12. Which reminds me real quick, I want to find DK Metcalf and make sure I didn't steer you guys wrong. No, these are his numbers. I thought I might have accidentally been looking at the projected when I was reading off his numbers, but no, he's been like right around projection every week. Keenan Allen is a buy low for me this week. Good luck. I mean, again, people know what he's about. That he is a primary target. I mean, he got 20 effing targets against Minnesota. That's ridiculous. It just didn't happen for him as much this last week. But he's a great buy now target, especially if somehow the guy with Keenan Allen had a rest of his team that was bad and now feels like, oh, I'm 1-3 or heaven forbid 0-4. And Keenan Allen is my only chance to try and get lucky and win a game, and he's on bye. So, yeah, go find the Keenan Allen manager in your league and just see what's up. Let me know in the comments if you have questions about who you should trade to get him. But you're always looking to try and package, if Keenan Allen's a wide receiver 1, a top 5, top 6 option, you're looking to trade a back-end wide receiver 1 and a bench wide receiver or a flex wide receiver to get Keenan Allen. That's kind of the name of the game when I talk about these trades, but always let me know in the comments. You can also find me on Twitter at bschaeffer12, BSCHAEFFER12. It's just my first letter and my last name, the number 12. I do a lot on Twitter. I'm on there all day, and so if I don't see your YouTube question, DM me on Twitter because I'm spending a lot of time on there for my baseball coverage that I do and fantasy stuff in general. So that would be another way that you can reach me. Calvin Ridley had the touchdown, but otherwise still kind of lame, right? Like this has been 3 weeks in a row where we just haven't seen, like, where's those 11 targets, 8 receptions for 100 yards that we saw from Ridley at the beginning of the year? He's a soft buy, but I think it could still be a little bit longer before he and Trevor Lawrence really can consistently establish what they're looking to do. But the Jags did look better in general, and he did find him as a red zone target this last game, so that's encouraging. Remember, I've been saying Drake London, if he ever scores a touchdown again, you should sell him. So like last week when he scored 5 points, that was not a good week to sell him, but I wasn't buying because I don't believe in this offense in terms of passing the ball. This week he scored. He got 7 targets, but it's Desmond Ridder throwing in the ball. If you can find someone in your league that will take Drake London off your hands, just do it this week. If it ends up not going your way, I can live with that. Like that's one of those that I just don't care if it pans out or not. I got to get rid of him. He's a fantasy cancer to my roster. And so the best time to get rid of him is when he looked pretty good on the fantasy scoreboard. It's not Drake London's fault. It's Arthur Smith's fault, but I cannot, in good conscience, be involved in that passing game more than I absolutely need to be. Like Bijan Robinson. That's who I want on that team. Otherwise, no. Let's keep scrolling down. Sutton, Gallup, Palmer, those guys are kind of whatever. Christian Watson could be a buy just because he looked good, scored the touchdown, and he just didn't play very much. these projections on Yahoo that say 11, 12, it's not high enough. He's going to be a 13 to 15 per week kind of guy. He's a soft buy for me as well, but always it's about the context, who you're giving away to get him. Jaden Reed, DeAndre Hopkins, Tyreek Hill had 10 points. Go, go, go. Go get him, everybody. Again, it's just like with Keenan Allen. It's almost impossible probably to get somebody to trade Tyreek Hill ever, but I'm going to ask the guy in my league. He was texting me about trades earlier today. He wanted Cole Kmet for me because I just picked him up off waivers just for fun. And Tyreek Hill, he was like, I'm not trading him. I wonder after a 10-point game if there's any chance. You might need to have 2 duds in a row, Tyreek, before I can get you. But you never know. I've got a pretty loaded wide receiver core on my roster, so we'll see. Let's see. All right, now we're really getting into the point. Sub 10 points, that's where you can start to think about buying somebody low. Tyler Lockett, to me, he's going to have plenty of weeks where he does this 8-9. I'm going to bet that he's got more weeks where he goes a dozen plus, and he's on bye this week. So he definitely qualifies as a buy low. Because he hasn't been super great so far, he's had the one spike week. He's probably potentially on some teams that don't have a lot of wins. They could be 1-3 or 0-4. And in that case, they're not trying to wait through Tyler Lockett's bye right now. They're trying to get a win. I'm still a believer in Tyler Lockett, so he's a medium buy for me. And always look to buy people on their bye week if you can afford it. And if that means sticking a bench guy in your flex for a week, okay. Especially if you're 2-2 or above, 3-1 or especially 4-0, you can punt a position because Tyler Lockett might only get you 3 or 8 or 10 points anyway from your wide receiver spot versus whoever. Michael Wilson had 26 last week. Like you could have had him for free off of waivers. Those are things to think about. A short term, I'm always looking to screw myself in the short term with my roster. Be like, how can I handicap my roster in order to, like in the short term, to make it better in the long term? I'm always trying to start a scrub at RB2 until I've been able to do enough trades that I don't have to, because I want to be better in PPR at wide receiver. So don't worry about not having an RB2. Do not panic trade to get, a mediocre RB2, when in reality, everybody after the top 10 or 12 RBs is kind of mediocre, and they're probably going to get hurt. So don't freak out about not having a nice, pretty roster or lineup, rather, in week 5. Get good at wide receiver. Get a good wide receiver in your flex, especially if you're in PPR, and then you can start to churn from there to try to find wide receivers. But I'm never trading like a startable wide receiver for a running back who's a little bit lesser, but I just feel like, I need a running back. No, pick up Antonio Gibson and throw him in your lineup tonight. Take your 6 points and don't worry about it. Like, it's ugly, it's gross, but I'm telling you, especially if you're not losing games right now, if you're desperate, if you're 0-4, if you're 1-3, different. But otherwise, I really do think it makes sense to go ahead and get as strong as you can at wide receiver before worrying. And so Tyler Lockett, stashing him on your bench for a week, if he improves your flex for next week, that's what you want. And then his bye is over, right? You only have to do it once, and then you know that when all your other teammates are going through buys, you can throw Tyler Lockett in your lineup each and every week. Jalen Waddle is a buy for sure. Even though he's kind of had a little bit of a down year, I think he's better than this, right? He's just a better player than this, and I guess he missed week 3, right? Yeah, the 70-point game he wasn't even in. He's going to have weeks that are better than this. The touchdowns just haven't gone his way yet. He hasn't scored this year. He's Jalen Waddle. Go buy him. And that's like a guy that I still consider to be a top 15 name, so I don't even really need to tell you, like, who to trade. You know who the players that are lesser in draft capital than, when you were 3 or 4 weeks ago drafting your teams, and Jalen Waddle, go trade those guys for him, especially if they've overperformed. Like, again, with what Jalen Waddle has done, if you can package Jahan Dotson and Drake London for Jalen Waddle 1,000 times, you do that, right? Like, those are the types of moves that I'm talking about. Because the guy that gets that trade offer is going to go, Cortland Sutton had an okay week. Drake London had an okay week. I mean, I'm getting 2 of those for Jalen Waddle, and what's he done all year? He hasn't even cleared a dozen points. All right, done. You will find people thinking in the short term, and that is a mistake that they would be making. Go get Jalen Waddle. Go get Zay Flowers. I knew that he was kind of playing over his head with all the target volume that he had gotten, but he still hasn't scored a touchdown either, and he's still been 17, 10, 13, and 8. He's not killing you from your flex position. Go trade for Zay Flowers in case anybody is off of him after he only had 4 targets last week, because he'll continue to get better as the year goes. Unfortunately, you missed your window to trade away Tutu Atwell, I think, because if Cooper Kupp comes back, you're not going to see 9 targets a week from Tutu. That's my opinion. We'll see if that ends up coming to fruition in that way. But, it's just one of those things. It's all about timing. Zach Moss, you can't really get anything for Zach Moss anymore. I used him to trade for Henry 3 weeks ago. That is timing, and you have to try to take advantage of it, and that's why these videos are good to watch. Make sure you hit subscribe, because every week I'll be telling you, hey, this is the week to try and unload this player. Am I always going to get it right? No, but I'll be honest with you about what my reasons are so that at least you're comfortable with the logic if it doesn't go the right way. Mike Evans is, I don't know why he's questionable. Hamstring, MRI. He'll probably be fine. I don't think it'll be an issue. And he's got the bye week anyway this week. And he only had 7 points because of the injury that he sustained. Go get Mike Evans probably as well. Go get Marvin Mims. That's another guy that I would say you're looking to buy low because he's still not seeing the routes that he should be, but the talent is evident. So just, you may not want to start him yet, but you're going to run out of time, I think, to get Marvin Mims. And right now there is maybe still a chance that you could get him from somebody. You might have to trade a player that's performed a little better. But if you're trading Jahan Dotson for Marvin Mims, as long as both those guys are on your bench, you're not relying on Dotson weekly, that's the kind of trade that I think you make. Cortland Sutton, I almost would rather have Marvin Mims. Is that crazy? You're probably starting Sutton if you drafted him, but in general, if I'm talking about bench upside, I think Mims might have it because he seems to have some juice. Don't go trade Sutton for Mims because that's a little bit too much of a hot take, but if you're comfortable with it, you got to do what you got to do. George Pickens, I wish he could have a quarterback. Wish he could have an offensive coordinator. He's so good. But look, he's even had a pretty fine season, except for this past week. He only got 5 points. Go trade for George Pickens. He's a talent, and you're not ever going to get him cheaper than when he just scored 5. So he's an example of a buy low right now. Michael Pittman. What happened to Michael Pittman this week? 4 points. Yeah, I traded him away last week. It was good timing. Now it's time to go get him, though. Look, consistency. 23, 13, 16, 4. Something changed for him in this game. And it's just one of those games. Anthony Richardson was 1 for 5, hitting him on targets. Disappointing for fantasy. But go take advantage of that. Someone who thinks the bottom is about to drop out of Michael Pittman, it's not. He's trusted as a go-to target in that offense, and so you trade for him off of a week like this. And again, is this going to work every time? Absolutely not. Sometimes the guy might say, screw you, I know how good Michael Pittman is. Okay, you move on to the next league. You move on to the next target. But you do this every week, I am telling you, you're going to end up with players that you didn't imagine you could have had. I have 5 first-round picks on my main league team right now. And my whole group chat is blown up about it. But I could look at each and every trade I made and say I offered value to my opponent. I can genuinely say that. Did I gain an edge in those trades? Sure. It allowed me flexibility to do what I've wanted to do. But nevertheless, T. Higgins, ugly situation, man. Injured, always, whatever. Dropping passes the week before. It seems like he might get traded. I mean, it's a hard situation right now for T. Higgins. I wouldn't advocate trading him away because the value is so depleted with him only getting 8 points combined over 2 weeks. He would be a trade away for me if he has a big week. But if he snaps out of it, I don't know if he's a head case or what it is like kind of going on with T. Higgins. If he snaps out of it, you'll regret trading him away. But that's why you don't trade him away off of a 4-point outing to where like at least if you move him off of a 20-point game, you're getting value for him to where even if he does sustain and turn into a top 12 guy again, you don't feel so bad about it because you got fair value. It's not like you were like, oh, I have to get rid of Higgins. I'm going to take, Tank Dell and just call it a fair trade. Well, no, I like Tank Dell, but that's not, I'd rather have T. Higgins. Speaking of Tank Dell, though, he's trade 4 after a bad week. It was a Nico Collins week, and not every week is going to be. I like Tank Dell still. I think you could probably get him off of a week where people say, oh, it was a flash in the pan. He's not any good. No, I think he's got talent. And Jackson Smith-Njigba might be the last real buy low candidate that we see here because eventually, over the latter half of the season, I just think he's going to get more involved. Look at this. He had 6 targets in this game, only 5 yards total. Short yardage targets are not as valuable, and that's what they're kind of giving him right now. But yet they're one injury away from being forced to unleash JSN, and it could happen to Lockett or it could happen to Metcalf, which we don't want. We love those guys. But Smith-Njigba, if you saw him at Ohio State, is good. He missed a full season of football for sitting out so that he didn't get hurt and hurt his NFL draft stock. But now he's here, and I'm sorry. He didn't technically miss a whole season of football. He had the injury at Ohio State, but like it was a minor injury, and I think he just didn't want to play, which is fine. But he's a little rusty as a result. I think he's going to kick it into gear, and you could get him for next to nothing. He's dropped on waiver wires today. I guarantee it. Maybe not yours, but go put in an offer. I acquired him as a throw-in in a trade that I made this week, and I'm just going to stash him until he gains value. I did the same thing with Quentin Johnston. He was on waivers. I picked him up. I'm a little less of a believer in Quentin Johnston than I am right now in JSN, but the same thing applies. Both of them are on bye, and so I'm telling you, they're going to get dropped to waivers this week. Be the one to pick them up, and in 6 weeks, you'll be thanking me. That's my prediction on that. They don't all come true, but that's where we're at this week. And Amari Cooper was terrible, so I guess you could trade for him, but I'm not ever really in on the Browns passing offense or Amari Cooper. Looking down the list real quick, don't trade for Sky Moore. I'm sad at him. And yeah, Chris Olave. Yeah, I almost missed him because he was so terrible. Trade for Chris Olave. Absolutely. I traded him away, but I got Jamar Chase as the wide receiver to replace him. So that is the kind of stuff that you can do still if you're selling a guy low. And trade for Deebo Samuel because I think he's a little bit banged up, but it looks like he's practicing Thursday, and he went 11, 22, 25, 0. He's not going to score you 0 when healthy. So go get Deebo Samuel aggressively. I mean, anytime somebody basically gooses, you go and you trade for that player, especially when they have the pedigree of a Deebo Samuel and they seem to be moderately healthy. That's going to do it for this episode. Thank you guys so much for watching, for listening, for coming to me for your advice. Click subscribe on the channel, click like on the video, and drop your comment below. We will put up a running back version of this sometime later on Thursday. It may not be until Thursday overnight, but it'll be useful for you on Friday as you get set for the fantasy weekend. Enjoy the Thursday night football. Appreciate you guys as always, and we'll talk to you next time. Peace.